Good morning and welcome to the State of Football. This is the ITL Takeover. We'll be with you all week. My co-host is Bo Marchionte, and we'll be spending a few days with you Monday through Friday this week. Rick Saratella is not here. He's off. He's probably sipping a cool drink by a pool somewhere, relaxing, enjoying one of the last weeks of summer. So Bo and I got you all week. Bo, good morning, welcome, and how'd your weekend go, brother?
Yeah, it was a good weekend. Good morning to you, Neil. Good morning to all the viewers out there. Hope to have a fun-filled, packed week of football talk. I know the guest lineup is incredible. I'm actually excited to be part of it and kind of delve into some of the information that I think our guests are going to be revealed. But I think we're going to have a great week, Neil.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. This is episode 255. I might mention as well. It's amazing how well Rick and Sam have been doing the show for a long time. We're real excited that they invited us to be part of the show this week. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk to some incredible guests. We've got three great guests today. We've got Ralph Ventre from the NEC conference. He's assistant commissioner up there. He's going to talk about some interesting issues related to NIL, related to the conference, related to a number of different topics. We've got Evan Brennan of UA Sports. Evan is an outstanding young agent, one of the more perceptive, one of the smarter ones out there. A great follow on Twitter at Evan the Agent if you're interested, if you're there. And we're going to wrap up the show with Nick Underhill. Nick is the owner of NewOrleans.Football. He's, to me, the finest Saints beat writer out there. He's done an incredible job. I know the one year that he was covering the Patriots for The Athletic, it was a rough year because he wasn't around to kind of provide his coverage. So real excited about what's ahead. Before we get started, I just want to talk a little bit about my weekend because it was a little out of control. I was at an AAU tournament with my younger son, my 15-year-old, and came into the venue a couple minutes before his game was scheduled to start, and the game ahead of it was wrapping up, and things got a little heated. They were actually shooting a technical foul when I got there. In the midst of shooting the technical foul, there was another technical foul called because two players were drawing. And so I could tell things are starting to get out of control. No cops around, probably 1,500 to 2,000 people in this venue. And so pretty soon the two kids went at it. And they kind of broke away from the people that had been holding them back. So I, like a big idiot, I just kind of go running in there, hoping to stop things. And I kind of picked the bigger guy. Probably was my first mistake, was to take the bigger guy. Kind of wrapped him around the waist. This kid's probably about 6 feet tall and about 220 pounds. I mean, he was thick. He was like kind of Charles Barkley circa 1985 or something like that. So I kind of grabbed the kid around the waist, and I'm turning, and as I do, I lose my balance. So the last thing that I see as I'm falling is about 30 people running towards me like a tidal wave of humanity. So I'm falling. They come, and they just kind of tumble on me. So now we've got a dog pile in the middle of this basketball court. And I mean, complete pandemonium, all right? So I'm trying to hold on to this guy. Finally, they get us all separated. They get us all back up on our feet. They get me away from him. I'm safe again. And two mothers start going after it. And, I mean, they're yelling. I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. So I kind of run over there. Well, they start fighting. And then they're pulling hair. They're throwing punches. I mean, it's like a heavyweight title match out in the middle of this basketball court. And here I am in the middle of it again. I mean, I don't know how I managed to do all this. So I grabbed the smaller one. I think I wised up this time. I grabbed the smaller one. But she's like throwing me around like a rag doll. I mean, I'm about 6'4" and about 230 pounds. She's about maybe 5'6" and about 100 pounds. And I'm like flying. I mean, my feet are off the ground because she's like, ripping me around. Finally get them separated. They get one team kind of secluded off the back of the court. They get the other team completely off the court. By now, there's 4 or 5 cop cars outside because they've called the cops. They called 911. So quite an interesting time, and I'm glad that I'm still in one piece. I'm glad I didn't get killed. I'm glad the peace was restored in Mansfield, Texas, just outside of Fort Worth. That was my weekend, but I don't know if you had anything half as exciting.
No, that story reminds me of I don't want to say, but it reminds me of a particular all-star game that we always like to joke around about. I know which game you know that I'm talking about, and that kind of set mind waves of that particular game. But no, lucky you're a big man. I'm half your size, so I wouldn't have took anybody. I would have just elected to watch you toss people around and do your best impersonation of Roadhouse, I guess.
There's video out there, believe it or not. I think one of the kids actually filmed it. I'm not sure where it is. Maybe we'll save that as a treat for later on this week. See me rolling around getting trampled on by about 100 people at a basketball game.
That's
all
awesome,
right.
dude.
Well, we're gonna without further ado, we're gonna proceed to Ralph Ventre. But first, just a quick word from on ITL's exam prep materials.
You can't become an agent without passing the exam. We can help. We introduced our first practice test in 2012. Since then, we've added a study guide and a second exam, and we've helped hundreds pass a test that 55% fail. Our clients succeed at a rate 25% higher than others. For the cost of a plane ticket, you can buy our guide and take both our exams multiple times. Check us out.
Ralph, welcome aboard, buddy. Let me read just a quick introduction of who Ralph is. If you're a regular viewer of the state of football, you already know Ralph Ventre by his regular appearances. If you don't, Ralph's the Assistant Commissioner for Communications and Digital Media Strategy of the SCS Northeast Conference. Ralph has been with the conference for 15 years. Today, he's in charge of the conference's public relations and social media initiatives. Ralph, welcome to the state of football, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I promise I'm not going to pick any fights here. I think you had enough action for all three of us for the week. But glad to see you're safe and you're ready to chop it up. Just want to say that I'm really looking forward to the relaunch of the state of football with Rick, the second season coming up next month, and honored to be a part of that. And I'm also honored to be on today with a published author, someone of such high stature as Neil Stratton. So Scout Speak, there you go. Pick it up if you haven't already. I don't live far from the beach, and as far as beach reading, whatever, you're on the airplane, hey, you just want to enlighten yourself, Scout Speak by Neil Stratton. There you go. And Neil, you could send that check to me when you're ready. Anyway, thanks for having me on, and it's always a pleasure to talk football. Obviously, NFL camps are starting up this week. College games in less than 6 weeks, or really less than 5 weeks, because they had that week 0 where a few schools are playing. But as far as week 1 of the college season, that is fewer than 6 weeks away, and it's just an exciting time. I'm ready to really roll right into it.
Well, one thing I will say, Ralph, thank you for the kind words on the book. Obviously, it is a coloring book. I don't know if everybody knows that or not. It's only got about 5 pages. It's a couple of really nice drawings that I made, and hopefully everyone can color inside the lines and really make it into a nice little pretty presentation there. I kid, but I do appreciate the kind words, Ralph, and we're so glad to have you join us. All right, well, let's just dig right into it. Bo, you want to take it away, man?
Morning, Ralph. First of all, we're all big fans of college football here, and the ACC. Who should we be paying attention to? Or to the teams, the players? Who are the best coaches? And what do you think are some of the better storylines that kind of emerge as we get this 2020 season underway?
Well, we're ready for our 26th season of Northeast Conference football. We've been an FCS league, formerly 1AA, ever since 1996. We've grown immeasurably over the last quarter century. What started as a non-scholarship league evolved into a scholarship league over 15 years ago. And now our teams are starting to have a great deal of success. We're starting to make some noise or make some more sustained noise on a national level. But as far as the 2021 season goes, we're really excited. We competed this past spring. We had 6 teams compete in the spring. Sacred Heart defeated Duquesne in our spring championship game. And then Sacred Heart went on and battled Delaware in the FCS playoffs. So it's a short turnaround. It's probably tough on the coaches and players, but for a guy like me, a football junkie, I love it. A much shorter wait time. Now, in the fall, we'll have all 8 teams, all 8 of our members will participate in the fall. So we're certainly ready for that. And as far as who to look out for in the Northeast Conference, we're not the CAA or the Big Sky or the Missouri Valley or North Dakota State, but we certainly have some good football players here, some great football coaches, and actually a really strong senior class. To start off with, though, just as a little view from maybe 35,000 feet, a little macro view on who the folks should watch. There's one guy this year who you can't mention the Northeast Conference without mentioning his name, and it's running back Julius Chestnut from Sacred Heart. He was the 3rd highest vote getter in the Walter Payton Award voting in the spring. He ran for over 800 yards in only 5 games. The season before, in 2019, he led the FCS in the entire regular season rushing with 1,495 yards. And what's so great about Julius is, to me, he is a combination of a number of great runners. He's big, he's a bruiser, but he's also quick and nimble. He can beat the defensive back down the field as far as his speed goes. And he's really just an exceptional player, a great young man. And we're really excited to have Julius compete under the Northeast Conference umbrella this fall. And there are a few other good players as well, of course. I know Darion Mackenzie, which he's a cornerback for Merrimack College up in Massachusetts. They are making the transition into Division I, and they'll be a full-fledged Division I member in 2023. But they have some good players. Darion Mackenzie, he's a guy that Jim Nagy tweeted about the other day. He's on the Senior Bowl watch list. So, we have some talent down here. And I'll say it time and time again, it's not just the NEC, but it's the FCS in general. You look at Walter Payton, he went to an HBCU. He played what some people would call small school football. Jerry Rice, Mississippi Valley State, Steve McNair, rest in peace, Steve McNair, Tony Romo. You certainly can uncover some gems down here in the FCS. And I'd like to think there are a few of them in the NEC this season.
Well, that's a great, those are great points, and obviously those are big time players that came out of that level of play. And just like scouts always say, you can find players anywhere. They may not get as many TV games, they may not be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, but they're certainly out there. Ralph, tell us a little bit about your view. I mean, everyone who's in college football is talking about name, image, and likeness right now. Maybe it's not going to be as big a phenomenon on the FCS level, but do you think it's something that players will have to deal with? Do you see NIL becoming a factor for you, for the teams that are there, for the players that are part of the NEC? I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's here. It's here already. It kind of came up quick once July 1 came in. And there are definitely athletes at the Northeast Conference level, not just in football, but in other sports as well, who could probably capitalize in some way off of this. And the thing is now, it's starting out here on a school-by-school basis. I really don't – I'm not a huge fan on a personal level. I'm not a huge fan of a big central government. But in this case, I actually think the federal government could do us all a favor if they passed some kind of national legislation for NIL, because now it's on a state-by-state basis, and we have schools in Maryland, in Pennsylvania, in New Jersey, in Connecticut, in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, and they all have different rules right now. Some of those state legislators have written laws that have passed. Some of the laws are in development. Some are like the Wild West. So basically, all of our members right now are abiding by their local state guidelines. And that's where it gets confusing because, some states have, I don't want to say harsher, but some states have more restrictions than others. It would be nice if kind of like the playing field were level. One example, I think that maybe in Pennsylvania's legislation, I don't know for a fact, but I think in Pennsylvania's legislation, it says something like, athletes cannot represent gambling products or alcohol and things of that nature. So I'd like to see some kind of just guidance from a federal level on this, because it's going to be a problem. I think especially at the big levels, you're always looking for an edge in recruiting. So say if Florida and Alabama, say Florida has this law that's really progressive and gives a lot of freedom to the student athletes, and Alabama doesn't have a law yet or has a more restrictive law. Florida, the Gators, are going to use that as a recruiting tool against Alabama. And when you're talking 50 states and so many schools, a lot of stuff can get confusing here. So I wish there was some kind of federal a mandate with this. As far as NEC players now, you'll see some of our athletes have signed up for this Barstool athlete database, and I can see some of the athletes. I don't think you're going to have an athlete with a mega deal with Nike, advertising for Nike, but maybe a star football player can do a local commercial for a car dealer and make a few dollars. Things of that nature. As far as with the whole NIL, as far as, people being in Gatorade commercials like Michael Jordan or LeBron, that's only going to be a handful of athletes at the college level. Probably your top profile quarterbacks or your top basketball players in the country, maybe top 5, top 10 guys can be actually like national spokesmen for these brands. But like I said, there may be opportunities in other sports and in other areas for athletes to generate some sort of revenue, whether, like I said, it's representing this local diner or so on and so forth. It's here. It's real. I'm all for the student athletes being able to promote themselves. The one thing that I have to say, though, is make sure that you're filing your taxes, too, because this is something new to these athletes. You're going to get this money on the front end, and then you don't want to get in trouble with Uncle Sam on the back end. So that's another element. This is a really complex, multi-tiered issue here, and it's hard to just sum up in a 7-second soundbite. Obviously, I've taken a lot more than 7 seconds, but it's a new frontier, so to speak, and I just think we have to wait and see how it all develops and just keep an open mind. But I think right now, really, from a league perspective, it's like you have, schools in 6 different states, all with different laws, or maybe 2 of the states don't even have laws yet. So it's a wait and see there, but there are definitely opportunities, whether those opportunities are big or small, definitely opportunities for a number of student athletes across the country, in the FCS, in the FBS, in the Power 5.
Ralph, you made a lot of great points there, but one of the biggest ones, I think everyone's thinking about, hey, if I'm a college player, I need to get a marketing agent. Don't forget about getting a CPA too, kids. That's an important part. I mean, that Uncle Sam's going to want his bite. That never changes. Ralph, thanks so much for joining us today, buddy. You've been on the money like you always are. You've become a cornerstone of this show, and it's a pleasure always to talk to you and kind of get your insights. Have a great day, buddy.
All right. Thanks a lot for having me. And I just want to encourage everybody to follow at NEC Football on Twitter, at NEC Football. And on August 3rd, we'll have our preview show airing live at 11 a.m. on ESPN and NEC Front Row, the NEC Football Social Media Day kickoff. And Rick Saratella will be a big part of that. So check out Rick, check out some NEC Football August 3rd. Thanks a lot for having me, folks. Have a great week.
Very cool, Ralph. Good luck on the season, buddy. All right. Our next guest is Evan Brennan of UA Sports. Evan is not only is he very young and perceptive and smart and rising young agent, but he's been certified since 2013. And in that short time, he's established himself as one of the most aggressive recruiters in the industry. And with 20 active NFL clients, he's in the top 10% of all NFLPA licensed contract advisors, believe it or not. People think every agent's got 50, 60 clients. That's not the case. However, he's also a thoughtful and progressive thinker and a must-follow at Evan the Agent if you're interested in the industry. Evan, welcome to the State of Football, buddy.
Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate you having me on today and excited to get a great chat going.
Man, let's talk about NIL. Ralph touched on that a little bit in the first segment. It's been a game changer already in college football. We're not even 4 weeks into it. I know that you're an aggressive recruiter. What are parents and players saying about it? Do you feel like they've got a good handle on even what it is, Evan? And how has it changed the recruiting conversation already?
I've been surprised. People actually have a better idea of it than I thought they would. I've been asked by parents some pretty intelligent questions: intellectual properties, using the marks of the school, where to do photo shoots, where they can occur and where they can't. So initially when I got into this, I thought it was going to be a total disaster. I thought there was going to be people asking ridiculous questions, but for the most part, people have been pretty intelligent about it. Some folks have a warped sense maybe of where the market may lie for their child, and that's the only thing I would say that's a little unique. And so kind of really setting expectations, helping folks understand that businesses have to make money too, and that by showing those kind of things have been really the only education process I've had to see. But for the most part, people have been pretty intelligent about it.
I'm excited to hear that. That really kind of comes a bit of a surprise, Evan, because we get so many stories about it's in the headlines, but there are not a lot of really insightful kind of stories, I think, explaining what's going on.
Morning, Evan. On a scale of 1 to 10, how reasonable are the parents and players being in expectations? I know you said you thought they were a little bit more educated on the process from the get-go, but also how would you rate their understanding again, and how reasonable are these folks being with expectations?
It's really interesting. It really probably coalesces with how many agents are talking to them. More and more agents that are blowing them up and making them giant promises, the more ridiculous they get. But if they haven't been, then they're actually quite reasonable. So I'd probably put it, 6 out of 10. A lot of what I've had to do is kind of walk parents through, like, hey, if you're a business, why should they want to work with your son? And really kind of put them through that mental, exercise and say, look, they're looking to do this to get into a certain market. They're looking to do this to get exposure. What does your son provide just in and of himself provides that kind of exposure? And then spin it into a positive. Let's talk about how we can take what your son is today and help him, make some money, do what he wants to do on the philanthropic side, and really, really, achieve something meaningful here. But just recalibrating kind of what people think and what's real and what's not is what, I deal with. And I think it's a good thing. I try to buy a lot of, class and a lot of credibility by saying, look, I'm not going to promise you the world. Let's talk about what's real and let's not talk about what's not.
It's a great point about the philanthropic aspect of this. It is a way for players to kind of get behind some of the issues and really help people give back to the community. Again, we hear so much about how much the players are going to benefit from this. There's a lot of people that can benefit from this, from them lending their names to this and doing these kind of things. Obviously, these players have a major impact on their communities, especially locally. And so why not do some good with them? Evan, the NIL is just one of 3 really kind of seismic forces out there that have had an impact on college football. Obviously, we're coming out of COVID. We're not completely out of COVID. There's still a lot of ways that COVID has changed recruiting, the way that scouts will do their jobs, what have you. There's NIL, but there's also the transfer portal, which I think to some degree has kind of gotten lost in the wash. I mean, what an incredible change this represents to how teams are made, how players play the game, about where they play the game, obviously. Of the three, Evan, which one to you has had the biggest impact on how you do your job and your day-to-day existence as an agent?
I would say COVID, and the reason is because it's allowed mediums like this, like Zoom, like Teams, Google Hangouts, to be much more prevalent. Before that, everything was done mostly over text message and the phone, but now I can be talking via video with just about anyone. Before that, I don't think a lot of players would jump on a Zoom. It would be more and more difficult to get a player on a Zoom. Now, everyone's really eager. Everyone's pretty savvy on how it works. It's pretty normal to communicate. And that allows me to talk to people all over the country, rather easily without ever leaving my office. Whereas before, I'd be traveling all over constantly just to get, very introductory basic meetings. So for me, COVID's had a huge impact on how things are on the recruiting front, on the player maintenance front, how I interact with my players on a daily basis. So I would say COVID, at least of the three, although all three have had a major impact one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Evan, in your opinion, how long, and you're an agent, you've had success for almost 2 decades, over 2 decades now, but how long should an agent go before, like the side job, before they make it a profession, when you look at that and that timetable?
I get that question a lot when I speak at law schools, and I kind of fill them in that a lot of times, in fact, almost all the time, nearly without exception, agents start off with a whole second job, whether it's an attorney or whatever it may be. Usually what I say is find out how much money you need to live, and find out how quickly you can make that in the agent profession. And once you've kind of really made that, then maybe you may want to look at moving over. It's a balance between going all in and being the most efficient agent you can be, and then actually taking care of the money aspect. It's going to take you a while. It's going to take you 5-6 years, I think, to build up a 6-figure income. And that's if you're successful. And that's if you're in a low percentage of agents that actually are making it. So what I tell people is there's no reason why you can't balance 2 careers. Be honest with yourself, be honest with your employer, be honest with what your expectation of this business should be. Have a really good business plan. Put yourself in a situation where you can be frugal, but at the same time you can be effective. And then when you start reeling in the checks, really phase it out. Okay, how is this cash flow going to come in? Where am I getting my money from? Do I have an investor? Do I need to look at all those kind of opportunities and really kind of build yourself as a real brand in business? But typically what I say is if you need to make 110 grand, prove that you can do it as an agent before you go all in.
That's excellent. And real quick, I just wanted to ask this. When talking about this NIL on these players, do you see any particular businesses gravitating towards where these players are actually going to make a little bit of money?
Local is the thing I usually say to just about anyone, unless you really work, you're playing for a Power 5 school at a quarterback, wide receiver, running back position. There's a lot of product deals out there, and so I think it's pretty easy for just about any average collegiate starter to get product deals. But if you want to make cash, I think the cash is in the appearances. I think going down to the car lot, the memorabilia store, or the local chain restaurant, that's where the actual cash is. Your name means something there. Booking you out for a couple hours, incentivizing people to show up is going to be really where the cash is. And that's kind of where we've had success is looking at places that want someone to show up and sign autographs, want someone to interact, want someone to incentivize people to come on down to their business. That's where the real money, at least early on, for the above average starter is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Makes good sense. All right. So, Evan, one of the reasons that we're doing the show this week is to talk about our agent exam prep materials. So let's talk about the exam, which is about a week and a half away. I mean, there are a lot of people that have been waiting 2 years for this exam. And so, first of all, Evan, can you recall when you took the exam? What was that like? How was it? Did you go into very nervous? Did the exam meet your expectations? How was that experience for you?
To be honest with you, Neil, obviously I took many years ago, I took your practice exam. It was very helpful. I really kind of over-prepared for it. To be really candid too, this kind of freaked me out. I finished the exam 45 minutes early, and I kind of walked out, and I was super scared because that's usually a very, very, very bad sign that something's gone horribly wrong. So I went back and sat down, looked at it again, just to make sure I got everything right. They will tell you most of what you need to know in the the sessions leading up to it. And so taking good notes, coming in, being very attentive, not taking anything for granted is going to be really important. If you study beforehand, if you've taken practice exams beforehand, if you really listen closely, you should stand a fighting chance to pass. It's the people that don't study beforehand, it's the people that don't listen, it's the people that don't take it seriously. Those are the people that aren't going to pass. So just treat it like that you're a serious professional, and this is an opportunity to engage yourself in a serious profession, and you should be okay.
It's funny, Evan. I get that every year. There are a few people that complete it far earlier than everyone else, and then they panic because they're afraid they've done something wrong or overlooked something, or they haven't taken the test as serious as they should. It's not necessarily a bad sign, and I guess obviously in your case it certainly wasn't. All right, so let's move past the exam. Let's say for everyone who passes the exam, they're not going to get their results till September or October. What kind of advice do you give them for year one, or even year two or year three? What is I don't want to say the secret sauce, but what are some words of wisdom for people who have always wanted to do this? They finally get to do this. What do they need to know? What would you tell them?
First and foremost is have a really good business plan. Understand the business well enough to where you can craft a business plan that's going to be, really transferable to what you're doing. Number two, develop characteristics within your business, sellable characteristics that are going to be different than other agents out there. That is really hard to do, but will set yourself up. You need to develop things when, you sit down with a young man in his front room and he says, well, why you? You can answer, and it'll be captivating. Maybe it won't be captivating in any other, context, but for him, it'll be captivating as to why he should choose you. And then lastly, get figured out how you're going to compete financially in this business. Are you going to have an investor? Do you have massive savings? What do you have to do in order to actually make an impact and from a operation standpoint to run this thing for the next 3 years? If you don't have that figured out, get that figured out really quickly so that you can do this the way that you want to do it.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, Evan, but how much money do you think you should be prepared to spend in year one as a young agent? Training fees are gonna be out there. Other various and sundry fees are gonna be out there. What's a ballpark number? I mean, I always give this number that I think, and agents get sticker shock from it. I want to hear from an actual agent. What are your thoughts there?
So I usually do it per player that you want to sign. I wouldn't sign somebody unless they've got an active chance of actually making an active roster to make you money. So that's kind of where I go. I toss in travel. I toss in maintenance costs. So per player. So we're talking from to recruit them, sign them, and maintain them for a year. If you're not talking about $23,000, you're either recruiting the wrong player or you're vastly underestimating what you needed to do. And that's kind of where I would put it.
That's a good number. That's a really good number. And I think that's very realistic. I know every year there are agents that come in thinking, well, I know somebody and he's always wanted me to represent him, and this is going to be the year, and he'll train at his, at the local gym, or he'll train at his school. It's just not realistic to think that. And I don't mean to be a party pooper. I don't mean to rain on anyone's parade, anyone who's watching today, but those are the realities of things. That's just the way it is. And I know some people don't believe that, and I get it, and I know they don't want to believe it, but that's just the way things work, unfortunately. Any parting thoughts, Evan, on the industry, on what's ahead in 2021, on what's going on in the NFL right now?
I think that as an agent, it's very important to be very malleable and very adaptable, or get out, to be honest with you. This business is kind of wild year to year to year and decade to decade to decade. Tactics that worked 10 years ago probably don't work now, and the same is true in the future. And so I think for agents to survive, unless you've got enormous 7-8 figure backers, you're going to have to be very, very adaptable. And I mean, I've been an agent for decades and decades and decades, but in my time, I've had to learn how to change things up. And I think that's the way that if you're going to survive in this business, that you're going to have to do it, is finding new ways to be successful and new ways to survive.
I mean, adaptation is so important in every industry, and the agent business is certainly not any different. Evan, thanks so much for joining us, brother. As always, you've been a great asset to me. You've been part of the ITL family for a long time. I wish you best of luck in the 2022, in the lead up to the 2022 NFL draft, buddy.
Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, Evan.
All right. So Evan talked about this a little bit. I want to talk to us a little bit about what we provided inside the league. If you're an agent and you're getting ready for this big exam, number one, I hope that you understand that it is a major exam. It is something that's going to be a lot harder than you may expect it to be. You may have passed the bar. You may have, obviously you've got a secondary degree. There are a lot of good things that you've done already. We're certainly not saying you're not a smart person, not an accomplished person. but you do need to take this seriously. We provide a study guide, which is outstanding. It's the best resource on the market. It's a 70-page PDF that we can have in your inbox within seconds of you purchasing it. We do sell it for a third-party vendor. It is so I can really be very complimentary of it and not sound like I'm boasting. It's really, really good. And then we have 2 practice exams, 40 questions each, and each one of them will be very similar to what you'll see on the exam. I think it's really important to see kind of the fact pattern questions that you're going to face. Yes, they're multiple choice. Yes, all those things are the case, but I think it's still important to see them before you go in there, because you don't want to go in and panic. You don't want to go in and feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not prepared for this. I didn't know this was going to be like this. There's a lot that they're throwing at me. I don't know what they're really asking. And you want to skip all those steps. And we're here to help you skip them. At ITL, we believe in the win-win. We want to help you achieve your dreams. We've been offering a practice exam since 2012, a study guide a year later. And then in 2018, we introduced our second practice exam. And literally hundreds of agents have gotten certified with our help. Again, it's not something that we're trying to brag on. It's just something we want to provide. We are here to help. We are here to provide assistance. You kind of walk along this path. It's a competitive industry, and we want to be there to help you. And we want to be there to help you succeed. So check us out. If you haven't already, you can find us at InsideTheLeague.com. You can find us on Twitter at Inside the League. There's a lot of information about our exam prep materials there as well. All right. So our last guest is Nick Underhill. Bo, take it away. Tell us who Nick is.
Well, I'm going to tell you who Nick is. Before I tell you, I travel with Neil. I'm with Neil at all the All-Star games, all the big-time events, and agent after agent who partake in getting that test and doing the exam has had success. So I just want to back that up. Now we're going to talk a little New Orleans Saints football with the man, the legend. It's Nick Underhill. He's been with the Advocate for 7 years. Also the Athletic, New Orleans football. It's Nick. He's unparalleled coverage on Hoot That Nation. If you're a Saints fan, you got to subscribe for his service. You're making a big mistake if you don't. But good morning, Nick. Welcome to the State of Football. How's today treating you so far?
Well, today's not treating me too great. You guys will probably hear a saw running in the background for time to time. My neighbor decided to start a renovation this morning at about 6:15 a.m. So I was up and ready for this, thanks to them. But we might get some background noise. But happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
This is live, man. This is live broadcast. These things happen.
We got somebody cutting grass on my side, though. We all got. Hey, it's part of Zoom spear, if you will. Nick, now you've been on top of the news of Michael Thomas' recent ankle surgery. Made me believe this wasn't a selfish move on Thomas's part, regards to what we're supposed to think about that ankle. But when he got it checked, did he owe it to the team to have that surgery by the end of February?
So I think it's a little bit of a complicated situation. I think Mike believed that he could rehab the ankle, and I think he thought he was feeling good early on in the offseason, went and got it checked out, decided his course of action was working for him, and stayed on it. And for the Saints part, they don't really get to look at these players until they're mandated to come back in June for mini camps when they're told they have to be there. So when Mike came back, the ankle wasn't quite where it needed to be, and they sent him out for surgery. But look, I mean, I think this is a situation where there's multiple opinions. The player chooses one, it didn't work out. Now they're paying the price. And, I think in light of how last year played out and some of the reporting that was coming out about him and the Saints maybe being a little bit at odds over some different things, I think it looks a little bit different. And it's easy to look at it and think that, oh, he's doing this to hurt the team, or, he doesn't want to be a part of the team. I don't think that's the case. I think Mike Thomas is a singularly focused person that loves football. I don't think he'd try to not be on the field for any reason. I just think that he maybe followed the wrong piece of advice, and now he's in a bad situation, and it looks horrible. But I mean, it's going to be probably 4 months, starting from the beginning of June. He could probably cut a couple of weeks off that. I think they'll probably be careful with it because you want him healthy this year after the way last year played out. So I'd probably peg that game after the bye. Maybe Seattle is being maybe the spot where you see him back on the field this year.
Okay. Well, let's hope. As a Saints guy, as a member of the Hoot That Nation, I've been pretty out and proud about that. I hope that we get better, the best case scenario rather than the worst case scenario. Okay, so Nick, As everyone who even casually follows the NFL knows, Drew Brees is now a broadcaster. He's no longer the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. I think it's fair to say that most of the speculation has been that Jameis Winston is the man who's going to step in and be the starter in Week 1. But it's not over yet. Taysom Hill is still a factor there. He's a contender for the starting position, at least if you listen to what Sean Payton says. What are the odds that he does somehow supplant Jameis Winston as a starter in Week 1? And do you think the Week 1 starter is the Week 18 starter? Do you think we see a one man win this job and hold it all the way through?
Man, Week 18 still sounds so weird. I'm not ready for that yet. But look, I spend every day thinking about this, talking about this. I mean, it's consumed my life basically since the season ended. And I go back and forth with it all the time. And I do think it's interesting that a lot of us assume that Jameis can change the way he thinks about football, see things differently, change his thought process. But there isn't a lot of belief that Taysom Hill can speed up his thought process. And I don't think those two things are necessarily, dramatically different. Both of them got to process the field in a different way. And for Taysom's part, he thinks that it was something mechanical with his feet. He didn't have his feet pointed the right way, and then it would take an extra hitch to get set up to throw the ball once he saw it. So that's what he's been working on this offseason. So we're going to see if that work pays off. But look, I will say, I think this Mike Thomas thing kind of creates a situation, and I have no idea if Sean Payton's looking at it this way, but one of my first thoughts was, well, okay, if you're lacking weapons and you can't move the ball the way you want to move it, maybe you think about running a really weird offense with Taysom Hill and try to surprise people and keep people off balance that way. But I do think you can get some elements of that too with Jameis at quarterback. I just go back to, who has the most upside, who has the least amount of distance to travel. I do think it's Jameis. I think that if he wins that job, the sky's the limit for him. But I don't think the door's as closed as a lot of people make it seem. I really think it's going to be an honest battle in camp. I think the Saints believe in Taysom a lot more than a lot of other people believe in Taysom. And I don't think that's eroded. I think last year wasn't quite as good as it should have been, but they didn't run the offense that they would run for him. He was still coming in off the bench. You couldn't change everything completely. They made some changes. They simplified some reads, but I don't think you built in the run element the same way that it would be if you were making an honest effort building your team around him. So I think that there's still more there, and I think that they know how to get to it. It's just, who's going to do the better job in camp. I'd put my money on Jameis just because, like I said, I think he has everything except that seeing the field the right way. And I do think that the Arians season was a little bit of an outlier. I think it's a little dishonest when people are like, 30 interception guy. I mean, it happened one time. I think you can throw that out. He's probably closer to a 15, 20 interception guy. Now, can Sean Payton get him down to 12 to 15 without changing who he is too much to the point where he's hesitant? I think that's the challenge that they're going to face this year.
Now, despite the somewhat unsettled quarterback situation, Nick, I think the Saints are expected to make, or be very competitive and compete for a playoff run this year. In your opinion, who's that one guy on that Saints roster that they can at least afford to lose to make the postseason happen?
I'd like to give you a creative answer here and something that's not extremely obvious, but I think you just go to Alvin Kamara just with the way that Mike Thomas has gone now. Now, if he goes, who are you throwing the ball to? Who are you handing the ball off to? The rest of their offensive weapons, there's nobody on the team besides him that's had more than, I think, 387 yards receiving in a season. So if he goes, you're in trouble. So I think early in the season, it's going to look a lot like it did last year. You kind of got to get the ball to him, let him go out and make things happen, hand him the ball, hope he breaks 3 tackles and gets 10 yards out of a dump off that's behind the line of scrimmage, because there just isn't that firepower. And I think there is a chance that Traquan Smith's better. I think Marquez Callaway is somebody that's ascending, but you take Alvin out off this team, you're in significant trouble. If we were going to go for a number 2, I guess I'd go to Mario Davis. They got issues at cornerback. The other linebacker spots unsettled. So you got to have somebody out there that can at least cover the flats on one side of the field. And if you don't have anybody that can cover the flats on both sides and you have issues at cornerback, I don't know how you're stopping anybody. So he would be my number 2 guy.
Okay. Yeah, great points there. And you're right. I think Demario Davis is a key member of this defense, especially without having that stout defensive line that maybe they've had in the past, given the trade and the suspension, unfortunately. All right, so let's talk about the secondary a little bit because I think that's on the mind of every Saints fan that's out there. I'm going to let you play Mickey Loomis. I think all of us, again, that remember the Saints of the Who Dat Nation were disappointed that July 15th passed without a long-term contract for Marcus Williams. If you can only sign one player, Williams or Lattimore, and I know we haven't played the 2021 season yet, but just where we sit right now, who do you sign? Is it Williams or Lattimore?
This is such a hard question. I think that, I think Marcus Williams is a safer signing for them. I think you know what you're getting with him, and I think he's going to keep getting better. He's, picking off those issues with his game every year, and you see him get better. Last year it was the tackling. This year, if you look at him, it looks like he's gotten a lot bigger. I think he's going to, be a little bit more of an enforcer, lay down some bigger hits a little bit. With Lattimore, the sky's the limit with him, and he could be. Look, there's games where you watch him, and I don't think that I'm overstating things here by saying that there's singular games throughout the season every year where you watch him, and he looks like a Hall of Fame talent. Like he has that kind of ability, but it isn't there every single week. And I don't know what has to happen for him to get to that point where there's that consistency. This year's a contract year. Maybe he finds it this year, but if he finds it this year, and I hate to say this, but does he find it next year once that situation's settled for him? So I think with Williams, he's always going to show up. I think he's a good ball hawk. He figured out how to tackle. Tackling was a big issue. If you asked me this question before last season, I would have 100% went with Lattimore, but Williams only missed 2 tackles last year, and his angles of the ball looked a lot better. I just thought he became really, really sound in the things he does. And I don't know. I'm going to ask you the same question back because you watch his team. I mean, which way would you go with it?
It's a tough call. I'll say this. Before I started the Best Player Available podcast, which I ran this earlier this year, I would have definitely said Williams easily because I just didn't see Lattimore as a consistent talent, as you alluded to. But it's very interesting because you talk to all these executives and scouts, and they all talked about how Lattimore was one of the top 3 or 4 talents in that draft, hands down. I mean, going into it, now we know obviously what the quarterbacks could do and all those kind of things, but just what Lattimore had that you couldn't teach is something that every team was looking for. And if the Saints were to pass up on him and let him go, he wouldn't be on the market for very long, and he'd make a lot of money. So it's a difficult call. I'm going to lean towards Lattimore, but there's a lot of hope in there when I say that, because you hope that he can really become the player that he has the tools to be. He hasn't become that player yet, for a number of reasons. Marcus Williams, I remember what the Saints secondary was like before Williams was there. I mean, it was just open season. I mean, I remember when P.J. Williams, my gosh, was trying to play defensive. It was trying to play deep safety, and it wasn't pretty. And since Williams got there, things have been locked down a lot tighter. So, it's a 51-49 thing, Lattimore there for me, but it's very close, and I can see it going either way. And I think probably this season is going to be a lot more telling about exactly which way the team will go.
I agree. I think he's harder to replace Lattimore, so I think that's one thing leaning in his favor. I do think if they had made the trade up and were able to get one of the top cornerbacks, Horn or whoever, in this year's draft, I think that would have made the decision a little bit easier, and I think it probably would have swayed much more towards Marcus Williams in that case, because now you have your next guy and you pick up another cornerback, which they still need to do right now to plug that number 2 hole. But yeah, it's very, very close. I just think long term the chance for regret is lower, I think, with Marcus Williams.
Excellent stuff. Now, Nick, let's talk a little fantasy football. That's right around the corner. And you mentioned Alvin Kamara earlier. That quarterback situation that we discussed several times already on the program between Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. If you're looking at Kamara, does his stock value rise or default with either one of those quarterbacks? And is he a first round, pick in your mind, depending on if Hill's the guy?
It's a great question. I think Mike Thomas going out, obviously he's going to get yardage early in the season and stack up there. With Jameis, I think it's easier to see the path to it. He's going to get through his reads a little bit quicker, get to the dump off. I do think that if Mike Thomas was healthy from the start of the season, I think someone could probably come to the conclusion that maybe Alvin had his best yardage season last year, just because I think the way that they had to play made Alvin have to just always be there within 3 yards of Breeze. And really it was, okay, can I get the ball here? Dump off. Because he wasn't throwing the ball down the field. And his just options were so much more limited than I think either of these guys will be. But I do think with Mike out, ball's going to go to Alvin a lot. I think his role is going to change this year, maybe more back to what it was like in 2017. He played a lot out of the slot, ran a lot of the routes on the route tree. I mean, his first game in the NFL, he ran an out and up from the slot. Like, that's just not something that a lot of running backs are going to do. So I think that he'll probably become more dynamic, but I don't know. The yards are a hard guess once, say, you get to week 6, 7, 8, everybody's back on the field. I mean, he's still going to get the ball. I still think he's a first-round pick for fantasy purposes. I still think he's one of the top 2 or 3 most dynamic running backs in the league. I just don't know what that yardage total is going to look like, and I wouldn't be surprised if it took a little step back.
Nick, I guess it was 2 weeks ago that Ryan Ramczyk became one of the highest paid tackles in the game. I'm not sure if I don't think he's the highest paid, but maybe among right tackles he is. I can't remember what the headlines were, and the way you do the math on contracts and stuff, it's obviously sometimes it's kind of beauty is in the eye of the beholder to some degree. The fact remains that the Saints made him a priority, signed him to a big new deal. Meanwhile, on the other side, Teron Armstead, a guy who's one of the better left tackles in the league, who's played the Saints for a long time, who's been with him for a lot of wins, is going to become a free agent after the 2021 season. Who is the starting left tackle to you, Nick, in week 1 of the 2022 season?
They're still kind of tied to Armstead beyond the season just because of the way his contract's set up. And every year they add voidable years to it, kick the can down the road. And, I know previously with Breeze had one of those deals and they renegotiated it before the void set in and were able to leave the dead money hits where they were and kind of avoid having that accelerate onto the cap. So when you guys know how this, the void hits, the money accelerates on the cap. So you have a huge dead money hit. I think that there's a chance that if you don't want to pay that could happen. But look, if I'm Dave Butts, Tron's agent, I'm looking at what Ramczyk got. He just became the highest paid right tackle in the league, 5th overall among all tackles. I'm looking over to the left side of the line and saying, hey, my guy has arguably been just as good. I would argue that he's been better at least last year. I thought Tron had a better season. He should be the highest paid left tackle in the league. And I think when you get to that point, their cap's still going to be tight next year. They did a lot of maneuvering to get through this year, maintain top level talent. I think they'll be able to do a lot of the same stuff next year. But at some point, a couple key players are going to get squeezed out. And I think Armstead's kind of in that danger area of being one of those guys where you're forced to make a decision you don't want to make. So if they want to keep him, I think you got to get ahead of that voidable money. So, one way or another, he's counting against the cap. I think it's better for the team if he's on the field. But look, it's a risky signing. I do think that Armstead's figured out things about his body to keep him on the field more. His health has been better the last few years. I know he's literally went all around the world to find different treatments. He goes to Germany, gets some stuff done, and his health has been better since he's figured those things out. But look, he's going to be 30 years old. He's had a ton of injuries. His game, it's less reliant on athleticism than it has been in the past. But I mean, it is not a signing that you make. I don't think you add 4 or 5 years to that and feel totally comfortable with it. But I think his talent level and that money coming on, if I were the Saints, I would find a way to keep it going.
Last question, Nick, and I'm going to ask you to be Mickey Loomis one more time. The Saints have created a little bit of cap room, and I think a lot of people thought, hey, cornerback, hey, maybe Richard Sherman. But we've had a lot of news that's come down the pike in the last week regarding Sherman, as well as regarding Michael Thomas. With the money that the Saints have kind of created, if you can only sign one player, what position does he play, Nick? And where is the greatest weakness right now as we begin training camp this week?
I still think it's cornerback. They decided Brian Pohl. They're going to sign him today, slot corner out of the Jets. He's really good at what he does, but they need an outside corner. And I think that's Marshawn Lattimore might get suspended to start the season. I think the league needs to figure that out pretty quickly just so everybody knows what's going on there. But I don't think you want to go into the season with Patrick Robinson and whoever else, Paulson Adebo, PJ Williams is your outside corners. I think you'd like to have a little bit more of a sure thing. I'd personally maybe go to Garyon Conley. I think that there's some upside there. I could see him being like an Eli Apple type player where he kind of figures out some things and has a nice little run in a system with familiar players, other guys from Ohio State, settles in and maybe taps that potential a little bit. man, they got to make a few moves though. I don't know if it's just one. I think they need to find a wide receiver, defensive tackle. They kind of, the cap squeeze this offseason. It wasn't taking out the good players. It was the middle of the roster, and then the question was, what happens when somebody gets injured? Where's the depth? Unfortunately for the Saints, that's playing out at defensive tackle, cornerback, wide receiver before they even get to camp, and you're kind of seeing the issues with that. So they got to find a way to bolster and get better in that middle area of the roster really, really quickly.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think I was like a lot of Saints fans. It just cut the heart out of me when the Saints had to cut Janoris Jenkins. I don't know how they work around that, but he was a quality player. And I remember those days of Eli Apple and Patrick Robinson and some of the other players that try to fill those shoes. It just didn't really work out for them. And so that was a heartbreaking loss. Anyway, that's life in the football.
Yeah.
I mean, in the NFL these days anyway. Nick, thanks so much for joining us, buddy. Once again, NewOrleans.Football. If you have any interest whatsoever in the Saints, in the NFL, even in the NFC South, I really encourage you to check out Nick. Follow him on Twitter. Check out the site. It's outstanding. He was with The Athletic. He's got an incredible pedigree. He's going to bring you things that you don't get everywhere else. And that's what I like most about Nick is just the level of analysis is a lot more than just stringing a bunch of easy quotes together and, kind of calling it a day. And Nick really digs in. He really takes pride in what he provides. And he's just a great beat writer. Thanks again, Nick, for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it, guys.
Thank you, Nick.
All right. So day one is in the books. We haven't burned this thing down quite yet for Rick. Hopefully we'll still be around tomorrow. They'll ask us back. Bo, who we got tomorrow?
Tomorrow, we're going to follow it up. I thought we started off a pretty good Monday for our first time in the booth, if we will. But for our listeners out there, our viewers, tomorrow's show, we're going to start it off with Eugene Lee of Vanguard Sports Group, terrific agent, and then former NFL offensive lineman Jeremiah Sirlis, who's also taking the agent exam next month. He'll be on to talk about it. And then our final guest tomorrow morning for the State of Football is former NFL executive Blake Bedingfield. And I think anyone who just heard that lineup should tune in. And as we kind of delve into another day of football. And like I said, I thought today went pretty smooth. I don't think Rick could be too mad at us, Neil, because listen, my shirt's still on. So we got a long week to go before things get really crazy.
Bo's shirt is still on. He's still got the ponytail working. He's still got the beard that he's had for over a year now. These things are all very uncharacteristic of Bo, if you know him at all. And so it's special. Who knows? Tomorrow he may show up with none of the three. Maybe no man bun, maybe no beard, maybe no shirt. Definitely no shirt. No shirt is always an option with Bo. Thanks so much for joining us for day one. We can't wait for day two to get started. Please join us tomorrow. We'll be back at the same time with 3 more great guests. See you tomorrow, guys.